What's up and welcome to FPL Today. I'm your host JNO. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to How to Play Fantasy Premier League here on 30 Days of FPL. Currently, I have no idea when this video is going up. I don't know what day it is, but I'm sure we're somewhere in the 7, 8, 9 region. So we are going to continue pushing forward till the start of the Premier League season. And if you want to support the channel, check out the links in the description down below with various ways you can support me. And also go and check out Teespring, where the 30 Days of FPL and the FPL Today official t-shirt are currently out until the Premier League starts. But enough about that, and let's get into the next topic we are covering here on How to Play Fantasy Premier League. And today we are covering chips, how to use them, how the best players use them, how to optimize them, and of course we're going to talk about the new chip, the free hit. But before we just jump right into each individual chip, we need to cover the chip rules, of course. I want you guys to know everything so you don't mess up and make a mistake in the Fantasy Premier League season. So the main rules are: you cannot play a chip the same game week you play a wildcard, and you can only play one chip per game week. Chips, unlike wildcards, can be cancelled before the game week deadline, however. So if you do play it early and you change your mind, maybe you realise someone isn't injured and you were playing the chip to mainly sort that issue out, you can cancel a chip. So chips are reversible up until the deadline, but once the deadline's passed, that chip has been used. So those are the three main rules that you need to keep into consideration. The fact that you can just cancel them is something that it has over the wildcard. Of course, the wildcard is a lot more powerful in the long run than all three of the chips. But the main thing to know is you cannot play two chips in one game week, and you cannot play the chip the same game week as a wildcard, even though the wildcard isn't the chip. That means if you're planning to use two of them in a combination, like for instance the wildcard and then the bench boost, which was a very popular tactic last season, you need to plan ahead and use the wildcard the game week before you want to optimize the bench boost. Speaking of bench boost, that is the one we're going to cover first, and it's the one I believe was initially the most powerful chip that you could use in the season. And what it does is it brings all the points from your bench into play into your game week total point score. So for instance, when you've had those game weeks where you have Etienne Capoue sitting on the bench, which a lot of people had last season, and he would go and get 8 points while your midfield's only got 2 points. If you had played a bench boost, Etienne Capoue's points would have been added on, as well as everyone else on that bench. That means you can have 15 players playing in one game week, and a lot of people, what they do is they use that when there is a double game week and then try and get 15 players that are playing 2 games each, which means that's 30 games in total where you can possibly get points, unless of course some of the players are in the same side. So speaking of bench boost strategy, and I've already covered one, most of the top players use this chip in the double game weeks, usually the double game week which has the most options of players playing twice. And a very common tactic is to use the second wildcard, which starts after January, after the Christmas period. They use the second wildcard the week before they plan to use the bench boost, so they can have the best team in place to get the most amount of points from their bench boost chip. And just so you can see what I did last season, I played my wildcard in game week 36. In that game week I did manage to get 80 points, which is a respectable score in a non-double game week. But game week 37, the bench boost time, when there was a double game week, I got 174 points, and there were people that got over 200 points. So that is the power of the bench boost. And so I would plan to use it the same way this year if I was you. Bench boost is optimized if you try and bring in players that are going to score points, all 15 of them. I know a lot of people said, oh, my bench still didn't get many points. I just think you have to take that risk. Everything is a risk in this game. The chips, the wild card, it could go perfectly for you. It went pretty well for me, 174 points, and it might not work out for you. But some of this game is about luck. What you are doing with the bench boost is stacking your deck in your favour for that double game week. The only pitfall I can see with this chip is the fact that at the end of the season, if you are using the strategy I would suggest, you are looking at end of season rotation when teams no longer have anything to play for. They start to play their youngsters. If they have something to play for, like cup competitions, Champions League, FA Cup, so on and so forth, they might start to rotate their team, so it gets harder to pick the players that will play in both of those games in a double game week. So that is the main downfall, whereas earlier in the season, if you tried to do the same tactic, you're pretty certain who are the nailed on players. So that is definitely something to consider, but I still think the best tactic is to use the wildcard and a bench boost as a combination for the biggest double game week. Moving on now to the triple captain chip. This is just a little bit less powerful than the bench boost chip, but it's still quite a valuable chip if used correctly. Basically, instead of doubling your captain score for the game week, the captain score is tripled instead. Again, this is a chip that is generally used in double game weeks because you're giving your captain 2 opportunities to score big, and if he scores big in both of those games, you could get massive points. Last season it didn't go too well for me, but the season before I did triple captain someone that got 3 goals and got a lot of points off of my triple captain. Last season, some people triple captained Harry Kane or Alexis Sanchez in the double game weeks and got massive points as well. So definitely a chip that can turn your season around. Of course, what you are looking for is a double game week with an informed player, and then preferably also with fixtures that help that informed player get a really big points return. I would say it's maybe better to use in the later double game weeks because sometimes those later double game weeks see some big score lines, whereas the early ones stuff is still a bit more competitive. However, you're still looking at the pitfall of rotation the later on in the season that you get to. My triple captain last year, I played it on Aguero in game week 27 when he had Sunderland and Stoke. It looked like he had the right fixtures. Aguero is a player that can score big. We all know that from his history. He only got 9 points, however, and so 9 points tripled is only 27 points. Still helped me that game week, but it wasn't the optimised use of the chip that I was hoping for. And the pitfall with this chip is it's all focused on one player, so if that one player gets injured or he doesn't have a good game week with the 2 fixtures, you're not getting the points. Whereas then someone else goes and uses it on the right player and they will get the points. So it's a lot more difficult to get a big point total because you only have one player that can really make this chip work. And then finally we move on to the hot topic, which is the free hit. It's a new chip in the game replacing the all-out attack, which meant I had to rewrite this whole show because I talked about the all-out attack chip, and yeah, it's irrelevant now, isn't it? So thank you FPL for the early update on that news. What the free hit does is a chip that gives you unlimited transfers without minus points hits in one game week. But what happens is after that game week is over, your 15-man squad before you played the chip comes back into play. Now I'm not 100% sure if you can make a transfer before you play the free hit and then that team comes back. So that's something I've got to look into. But the squad before you play the chip is the squad that you'll have after the chip has been used and the game week has played out. However, this breaks one of the rules of the chips that I've just said at the beginning of the show, which again, it wouldn't have if they had told me a little bit earlier, but the free hit chip cannot be cancelled. Every other chip can be cancelled, but the free hit chip, once played, you have played your free hit, and that is that. Now, of course, we can't really look at what the top players did with this chip last season because it wasn't around last season. So I'm going to give you the 3 strategies that I think are most likely to be used by the top managers in the game. And we're going to start off with strategy 1. I believe you can use this for game weeks that have blanks in it, because then what usually happens when there's a game week with teams not playing is you range your side earlier on to have 11 players in that game week. What that can do is outside of that game week you can not optimise your points because you're bringing in players you might not have brought in just for a blank game week. This way you can use the free hit just for that game week with blanks in. Last year there was a game week with only like 4 or 8 teams playing, so you could use it then, pick the best team for that game week only, and then carry on with the strong team you had before the game week with blanks in. That means you don't have to bring in a long-term transfer strategy to optimise that blank game week, and it means you can optimise points in the game weeks before and after that blank game week. Strategy number 2, and we're looking at it for using in the double game week you don't use the bench boost in. This way you can optimise your team for 2 double game weeks without having to think of a long-term transfer strategy. It means you can pick 11 players that have the double game week for the game week, and the bench you can literally put the cheapest players you want to, so you can optimise yourself for one of those double game weeks. Again, you don't have any long-term transfer strategy you have to put in place, and it will optimise points around a double game week instead of, again, you putting players in that you are only starting to put in because of the double game week that's up and coming. And the last strategy, and I don't think it's going to be the most common strategy, but I believe it is one that you could consider, and it's game week 38 optimization. Now, when it comes to game week 38, you may be chasing mini league leaders, you may be chasing ranking. What you could do is literally use this chip in game week 38 and try and get the biggest point total possible in that final game week. And the plus side is, if you play the chip at this point, you aren't going to revert back to your team because the season is over after game week 38. So you can literally make that pick without worrying about having to clear up anything after, because there is nothing to clear up. The season is over, and you can literally pick 11 players that are just going to play games where you think they could score big points in game week 38. Anyway guys, that is chips covered for today. If you have any more questions about it, ask in the comments down below and I'll do my best to answer. 30 days of FPL is still going strong as far as I'm aware, although I am recording in advance, so hopefully everything is going great. Thank you guys so much for the support as I'm recording this. I'm averaging over 20 subscribers a day, which is absolutely amazing, so thank you guys for the support. Check out all the links in the description down below, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and smash that like button. I've been J&O, this has been FPL Today, and remember, it's all about the game.